Hey, I'm Bob at ILikeToMakeStuff. Today's video is sponsored by Warner Brothers Games, and they asked us to make something from the brand new video game, Hogwarts Legacy. This game was developed by PORTKEY Games and is available now on the PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. In Hogwarts Legacy, you get to become a student at Hogwarts in the 1800s and go on your own unique wizarding adventure, and it's awesome. As you're playing through the game, you're going to come across a portkey that looks like this, and this is the object that they asked us to make. But while I'm recording this, the game's not actually out yet, so we only have a couple of pieces of reference material from the developers, and they want us to make this thing in the real world and make it look like it's magic. On top of that being difficult, we also have about a week to do it, and so we have a whole lot of work to do in very, very little time. Fortunately, we did get some 3D models from the game developers, but they're low polygon models, so we can't really use them for 3D printing, which means we're gonna have to completely remodel this thing from the ground up. Once we get it modeled, we have to figure out how to print it out in ways that are repeatable, because we have to make more than one of these. And then after that, we have to paint it and texture it so that it looks like it's not a 3D printed object. And then on top of that, they want it to be magic. They want something gold to glow when you press on a button, and I don't know how to do that yet, but we're gonna figure it out with electronics. We've got a huge amount of stuff to do in just over a week, but we have already started brainstorming, and Josh has started modeling, so let's go check it out. How's it coming?
I'm almost done. Let me show you what I'm doing so far. So these are the references we have so far. We have some detailed drawings, and we have what looks to be gameplay capture. It looks a little different from picture to picture, so we have a little bit of leeway as to the details, but the key is inside of this scroll-like case. It pops open in a clamshell. This gold emblem has to light up. We got to figure that out. But a lot of this detail work didn't come out in the models that they gave us, so we had to recreate them. So I went into Fusion 360 and I measured, I scaled, I figured out as best I could what the scroll case and the key should look like. It's going to open like this on some hinges. A lot of this is going to be 3D printed, and the key itself is going to be on like a crushed velvet case. But now that we have the design worked out, I have to fit the electronics in here, and we have to figure out how to make it printable so that we can make 2 of them. So not only does this model have to look nice in Fusion, it has to work in the real world. So I am designing in tolerances for the hinges. I have to make provisions for the electronics and the buttons and stuff later on. So as I complete a part, I'm going to be printing them here on the resin 3D printers. I'm going to sand them and make them look really nice. Then I'm going to pass them off to Bob so he can finish it and make it look beautiful.
Now, part of that is actually figuring out which printer to use for which part. Some of these need to be really detailed and small, and some of them need to be very large, and so we're gonna have to use FDM printing and SLA printing on different machines so that we can have all the pieces going at one time. While those are printing, I'm gonna go make this thing look like it's real, and then we'll come back later for some other pieces. Seem right. Those definitely do not line up. There's too much material right there in that groove.
Oh, I think I know what the issue is. The hinge space didn't get removed from the other models, from both of them. Yeah.
Now I can Dremel them out, you know, to make them fit. I mean, it's not a huge deal. I just want to make sure I'm using the right piece. Yeah, if you'll just update that model, I'll go ahead and cut this one out and then print the other one whenever we get to it. So this thing has to be mounted in here and has to be held in place. And we've got a little contraption that's some laser cut wood with some foam on it, and this will mount and fit right in that little gap. And then it has an area for this to drop in and set in place, but there's not enough of a tightness to hold it there yet, and that's because we need to cover it with a felt. But we have this crushed velvet looking stuff. So what I want to test here is if we can wrap it around here and then press this in and have it stay in place. So this crushed velvet will get glued down so it won't move and it'll be forced down inside this gap. It'll be pressure fit in place and should be good to go. So let's try to glue this stuff to the holder and see how that goes. This is a really fantastic print from the SLA printer, but it's supposed to be clear. Unfortunately, the clear resin that we had didn't really do the job that we wanted it to do. So we printed out another one in gray. Josh got it all sanded up. And so now that we have this kind of finished piece, we can mold it and cast it. This has to be clear because this is the logo that's on the front of the container. It's gonna act as a button. It has to glow. So we need it as clear as possible. And to do that, we're just gonna have to mold it and then cast it in something that's completely clear. Because this is from a resin printer, it will actually cause certain silicones not to set up correctly, so you have to use a tin cure silicone. We've got this stuff that we've used before, and then we're gonna have to figure out what to use to pour the cast. I've got the mold ready to cast, and you saw me put this in there and pour the mold around it, thinking that we'd have a nice big opening we could pour stuff down into and it would flow down, not realizing that this thing is very shallow and very flat. So what I'm gonna do is try to cast this with some tabletop epoxy. This stuff is supposed to run to completely cover a tabletop, so it should level itself, hopefully. I'm also gonna use a syringe and try to actually squirt it down into all the ends of those things to get rid of air bubbles before pouring it into the big opening. We're finding that maybe there's a little detail that didn't get pushed into the model as it should, or I printed something in the wrong orientation, and so like they're deformed a little bit, so I just have to redo them. This piece takes about 4 hours. This piece takes about 9 hours, and the other door takes about 7 hours. So right here, we have a lot of hours of wasted prints. We have other stuff on the printer right now, but all that to say, I'm finding out that this entire project is not gonna be linear at all. We're basically working on all the different parts at the same time in different stages. So I have things on the printer. I do have some parts being primed right now. We've got stuff in the mold. We have some pieces that are primed and ready for paint. We've got this part that's ready to put on the material. So we have a bunch of different pieces, and we're just gonna have to move ahead as quickly as possible on all of it. We're finally ready to put some paint on some of these pieces. This thing has like 3 different types of gold on it. I don't know. So we have a whole bunch of different versions of metals. So we've got brass, bronze, gold, old gold, regular gold, and the other regular gold. We're gonna thin some of these out and just try to mix up the colors so that each one of these bands kind of has a different shine to it.
You know what?
Holy snot! What just happened? Ooh, pretty cool. I think that'll work. One of the things I'm trying to figure out is that the outside main body of the canister is like this kind of black marble, and then it has these gold wispy details that kind of go all over it. So instead of trying to paint that, because I don't think I could do it, I found some contact paper that's supposed to look like granite or marble. And so I think what I'm gonna do is use this as a base, cut off a piece and wrap it around, then we're gonna have to coat it with something so other things can stick to it. And once we've got that, then I've got a bunch of different types of gold vinyl, and I've got some copper tape, and so we're gonna try to make these little wispy designs by hand, and if not, we can always go to the vinyl cutter and maybe cut those pieces out and overlay them. It's a big experiment. It's the next day, and of course, some of the prints that we printed and started to paint are now not gonna work. We found different things that we needed to do to them. So we've got new versions of a lot of this stuff. I'm having to print these overnight to get them done in time. And basically we have the cap here ready to be painted again. And this is gonna have several layers of paint, so we're gonna get that base layer and then we'll figure out the details. We've got some hinges built into the model here with a hole that goes through it, and that hole is made to accept a really tiny brass rod. So this brass rod theoretically should be able to fit all the way up from end to end through these tiny little holes. And if not, we're gonna have to do some adjusting. So let's see if we can get this to work. Come on. Ooh, perfect. Oh, yes. And then it explodes. Oh, it worked. That is our hinge, which is great because there's just enough tension in there that like it's gonna hold it in place. But it definitely closes without too much work. Now on the painting for these, this inside section is gonna end up being the same kind of blue crushed velvet that we had. It's gonna look awesome, but before we can put that in, we have to start painting all of this outside trim to be gold. So I've got a base coat of gold on all these different pieces, and we're ready to start actually putting it together and working on the electronics. The idea is that this whole thing is gonna go right here. We also have to figure out how to get this thing to light up. This right here is a really cool LED. It's like a noodle. It's like a flexible row of LEDs that you can bend. And I've got a really simple circuit here. Basically, when you press a button, this thing fades on, stays on for a certain amount of time, and then fades off. But unfortunately, this LED is not really bright enough to do what I was hoping it would do. So we're not gonna use it. Instead, we're gonna use these LEDs that are way brighter. It's gonna light it up totally differently. And the plan now is to embed a few of these LEDs into the back of this thing and animate them so that they kind of sparkle rather than just fade on and fade off. So getting those LEDs in the back of here is one challenge. Getting the button built into this thing so that you can press it is the other challenge, but I think I have an idea. I think we can actually put the button on the back right here in the middle so that when you're holding the canister, you can use your kind of trigger finger to press that button and it'll make it look like it's gonna interact. That way you don't even have to touch the logo. You can just like come near it and it'll light up. So to do that, we're gonna have to now cut a new hole in the back, embed a button in there that just barely sticks out, and then we're gonna have to cover that button with the vinyl stuff that's gonna cover this entire surface. So I'm gonna have to start cutting holes and just experiment.
You got one shot.
That's right. By the way, this has to be done tomorrow. One way to extend a button like this is actually to take a piece of 3D printing filament, cut a little section and glue it on the tip of that button so it's just a little nub that sticks out. And then you can always trim that nub off to be the right place. Okay, so then we gotta glue that thing in place. Dang it! It seeped in. I just barely used any glue too. Okay, do it again. I think the pattern is just too much. Like, it doesn't really match. And it might still work, but it just feels too busy. But we don't have time. This one is more subtle, and so maybe that's a better thing. Good grief, this is gonna be tedious. I finally started working on getting the fabric on the inside of these panels. The outside looks good, but the inside looks like garbage. So I started with a piece of paper and kind of trimmed it to fit. And then I can use that as a template to cut a piece of fabric, which also took several tries because it's not something I have a lot of experience with. But now we've got a nice piece of fabric that will fit in there really well. And I'm gonna attach it with some spray adhesive, just putting it on one side. So it's not quite as strong of a bond, but it is repositionable. So I'm gonna spray this and stick it to this. Okay, so now that we have one of these doors done, you can see what it's gonna look like when it gets attached with the key in place, which is gonna be really cool. So this should fit right there. Feed it through, ooh. And then we take a cap, put a cap on there, and it's gonna look like that, which looks pretty awesome. So the other door also has fabric ready to go in it, but before we put the fabric on, we have to run some electronics. We need to run a wire from this bottom cavity down here up through this little slot, into the door, out the front of the door, and into the back of the emblem that needs to glow. So this emblem needs to have some LEDs built into it because the stuff I showed you earlier is not gonna work out. So I've gotta figure out how to drill some holes in this, embed the LEDs in a way that they are flat enough to sit on this and be completely hidden on the backside by that fabric. It's not gonna work. So the timeline is getting very, very close. Our original finish date is tomorrow, and I feel like we're maybe at like 75%. It's getting there. Made a lot of progress today, but we have a whole lot to do. and the LEDs are turning out to be a little problematic. It may be like a mad midnight rush to get the thing finished, but as of now, we're just moving ahead with tomorrow being the last day to work on this. I'm embedding these magnets in the edge of these doors that will hook into this cap. Once that thing is glued on, it won't need the magnets to stay in place, but right now it helps it both stay in place and keep the doors shut, so that actually works really well. Nice snap to it. When it's all glued together, we still have to be able to change the battery. The battery is going to be underneath this, so I made a little leather tab here, so you can reach under this end cap, lift that up, take this whole section out, you can get to the battery pack to recharge it, you can make any changes you need to the Arduino, and then this thing can slide right back into place. Oh yeah, so fancy. So today's the last day that we get to work on this thing. It has to be finished very, very soon. One of the original things that we wanted to accomplish with this project is that it had to look real. And I think we've got it to a point to where it looks real, almost. It's not quite finished, but all of the detail work in here I think is looking really nice. I'm very proud of all of the different colors we have and all of the intricate stuff. Unfortunately, we've had to reprint most of these pieces more times than we've shown you for little problems here and there, things that didn't look right, and we've had to go back, but I think the results have been worthwhile. So we're gonna check that one off the list, and the last thing we have to do is make it magic, and that really comes down to electronics. So basically, I've got some LEDs built onto the front of this thing that are gonna get covered up by the emblem, and then I've got all of the electronics, which are very, very simple, on the inside underneath where the key is going to sit. They're all going to run off of a 9-volt battery. So basically all we have to do to finish this up is cover this surface, put on the emblem, and then we can see if we can make it magic. This thing is finished, and I have to say that I'm very proud of it. It was really awesome to work together as a team and make something that did not exist in the real world into something that I can hold in my hand. Over the last couple days, I finally got to play the game, and it was super cool to see this thing in the story. Big thanks to Warner Brothers Games for sponsoring the video, but also for letting us make something from Hogwarts Legacy. This game is available now on PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X and S, and also on PC. We're gonna put a link down in the description so you can go get it, and if you've already played it, let us know what you think down in the comments. Thanks for watching. Now it's time for bloopers.
I'm gonna hand this stuff off to Bob as I finish them so he can finish them.
Gonna keep cycling them through. Dang it. Farts. And this is the thing that the Warner Brothers, both of them,